Let's rock and roll. Jordana.
Okay. Hello. I am Jordana Zeldin. I am a sales coach. I've been in the B2B space for I think 6 years now, and about 3 months ago launched my own sales coaching consultancy called Spring Training. And practice is a super vital part of the way that I coach, the way that I've seen sellers improve. So when I found out about you guys early on in the pandemic, I was like, holy shit, who are these guys that have created this amazing space for sellers to do the thing that we should all be doing? So I've kind of been a fangirl from the early days, and I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Thanks for joining. Gavin,
Yeah.
how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, so I'm a Sandler wizard. I do coaching, business development, and training locally in Ohio, but we're reaching other climates. As you can see here, I'm all around the world. Happy to be here, second time around. Let's go.
Awesome.
Go.
Thanks for coming, Gavin. As you can see, humor is a prerequisite. Miss Quick.
Oh God, I'm Miss Quick, and I'm in my bedroom. That's what I got. I'm not all around the world in Texas. I took a nap earlier. Don't know if I should be saying that live. Okay, so this was actually one of the biggest weeks in my career so far. I closed a massive deal with Fortinet 4 months in on the job. And yeah, it was a crazy week. We have these cool metrics and stuff that we have to meet, like 30K in closed business and 100,000 in pipeline generation, and it's called Win the Week. And I did that as well. So I've been exhausted hustling this week. So Steven, the advice you're gonna get is all gonna be pretty garbage from me. It's gonna be like, hey man, that sounds awesome.
Sweet.
All right.
Just keeping it real.
Awesome. Patrick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. I just came off a client call, so I'm all in that mood, to sell, which is awesome. I kind of sulked to the background of the sales world and became a sales enablement and training manager. So I spend a lot of time telling people what to do and not a lot of time doing it. So I'm a hypocrite. I'm also a podcast host, mental health advocate. I'm helping scale a worldwide sales team right now, enterprise, upmarket, all that stuff. So I think that kind of fits in what Steven's doing, and I'm excited to see what he has.
Amazing. All right. Really quickly, I'm the only Canadian on the call, so I will.
I'm Canadian.
Oh, what?
Oh,
I don't live
two?
in Canada. I don't live in Canada, but I was born in Calgary, and my husband was born just outside of Ottawa. So
What?
That moment
Gosh,
when
Francois.
Francois just got his thunder
oh.
stolen.
You
Just
thought you were cool, Frank.
Insert sad trumpet sound right now. So my joke is going to be, I'll take your applications to immigrate to Canada for a low fee, but I don't know how funny that is now.
Sorry for stealing your thunder.
That's okay. All right, Steven, tell us about who you are and how we can help you today, man.
I am Stephen Chase. I am the singular senior sales development representative at a company called Findem. And we are in the talent acquisition space, and as far as I'm aware, coining the phrase people intelligence. And I'll explain why here in a minute. But essentially, we're just helping talent acquisition leaders leverage data to make more strategic workforce planning decisions and then be able to execute against those goals appropriately in a really creepy way, but whatever. I think Patrick, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick wants me to go into how I'm doing okay at booking enterprise sales engagements. I'm not really sure. Just to be perfectly honest, I wasn't at all prepared for this. So
neither were we. So
help us understand, are you 90% outbound, 100%?
Oh, yeah. I primarily focus 100% on outbound.
Yeah.
We just came out of stealth mode. What's today? Last week on the 14th, we launched out of stealth mode. So I was actually working for Findem, just to give you a little background, as an outsourced SDR at my previous company. So they'd come to us and said, hey, we need some help in the outbound sales development space. And I was the resource that was designated to their program. And just a little pat on the back. Apparently I did a good enough job because they brought me on internally. But really in those 3 months I was working with them, I've been doing all of my outbound prospecting with zero brand awareness, just sheer willpower and value of the product. So yeah, that's really it. Just 100% outbound. And I think the product is actually really disrupting in a way to how a lot of talent leaders are looking at their recruiting process and how they actually go about planning for their actual workforce strategy when it comes to either just hiring in general or diversity and inclusion or diving into very specific skill sets, like you might have somebody in biotech or a really odd coding space, because it kind of gives you visibility into all of their skills in one space.
So so right now, like, is your like ideal customer profile super defined? You know exactly. So is it just really getting your outbound dialed in, or is that ICP still like not super clear?
I think it's actually really clear in a sense, because we're lucky that it's kind of broad. So like we're not defined to any particular industries or any particular company sizes. Really, it's kind of lucky. The only thing we don't target is staffing and recruiting agencies, because we want to focus on the internal enablement of talent teams. So yeah,
So
I would say I got pretty lucky in this front. So
Patrick, you know, just to put you on the spot, do you kind of want Steven to like get right into the weeds of like maybe showing us some of his like outbound approach, or do a role play with one of us and see like if we think it's as groovy as he thinks it is?
Yeah, I know a decent amount of what Steven's doing, and I'm really impressed by it. So I'd love to see just like the overall process, Steven, and we'll give you some compliments there. And then maybe for like our part, if you can give us where, even though you're being successful, there's some things that you want to improve potentially, or frustrations that you feel on a weekly basis, that would be awesome too.
okay, so I guess for the general process, I mean, we're still looking at a couple different data providers on more or less streamlining how we're getting our data and how we're being able to contact people. So realistically, at this point, I've actually been using our product as well as with the help of some other data trials to find prospects and Sales Navigator, obviously. But like I said, in terms of reaching out to people, it's kind of lucky because we're just focusing on the chief people officers, chief human resource officers, and then the VPs of talent beneath them. I used to focus primarily on director up, because in my eyes, and I don't know if this is true or not, I don't have any like severe background in B2B sales or any type of corporate business, but in my thought process, if you want to get to the people that are influencers, then I would focus at the directors. Depending on the size of the company, then potentially they could make decisions based on the pain that they feel with their teams and things like that. And then you can't get a hold of them, you just keep going up. But recently I've started taking the top down approach. Bottom up was really successful for me, but really targeting the C levels and the VPs at this company has been really successful. And really, I'm using the Justin Michael method. I'm going to go ahead and give him a plug on this. But really, I've just been taking a lot of the stuff that I've been learning from Justin Michael and applying it to my emails. So it's like hyper short emails, but very punchy with value and very direct with not necessarily how you ask, but it's just like, hey, would you be open to having a conversation about this? Like, is this something that's relevant at this time? Just kind of breaking in and trying to get them to have a conversation with you. And I was actually watching the clip that Patrick sent in one of our chats earlier about asking for time. I don't do that, period. I don't ask for set periods of time, because obviously if you're calling a C level, what C level realistically has 15 minutes? You know what I mean? The idea is to address the challenges. That's what I do. So actually, I'm just going to give you guys an idea of what my cold call script sounds like. We don't have to do a role play.
Yeah.
But essentially,
I'm also really curious, Steven, if you can tell us like what's your cadence like? Is it like email, call?
It's really aggressive, actually. It's the combo prospecting method. So it's like, as soon as I make a phone call, I'll leave a voicemail that's basically the same verbiage of my email. And then at the end of that voicemail, I'll say, hey, I'm going to follow up with a note as well. So keep an eye out for that. And then I'll hang up and immediately send them my email. And usually the subject line's like 2 to 3 words max. So depending on which spear email I'm sending them, it'll be like diversity strategy or time suck, because recruiting at this point in time is an absolute time suck. Or sourcing recruits, excuse me, is an absolute time suck given the tools that they have to use. So I'll use that as a subject line. I've used subject lines just to try and be funny that's like destined for the trash folder. So just to see if they'll open it and hopefully throw it away. But in terms of my calls, my intro is quite literally, hey, so-and-so, this is Steven. Listen, I want to be upfront. This is a cold call, so feel free to hang up on me. But if you have like 32 seconds, I'd love to tell you why I was calling. And usually, depending on the tonality and how much coffee I've had that morning, they'll either laugh at me and say, hey, go ahead and keep going, or they'll just say, or they'll just hang up on me, which is fine. But usually after they laugh and say, yeah, go ahead, I'll just tell them, hey, well, I'm calling from a company called Findem, and the reason I was reaching out to you is because I saw that you oversee talent acquisition or talent operations, or you're the chief people officer of ABC company. And what we found is the recruiting process is pretty broken because you guys have to use a bunch of different tools that don't really talk to each other very well, let alone your ATS. So you don't have all of these candidates going into a place where you guys can see them in one location. So what we've done is we've actually taken it to the next level in terms of allowing organizations to be more data driven in the way that they make sourcing decisions, by giving you the ability to see all the data on somebody that you're looking to bring into the organization in one place, measure your workforce metrics against your competitors, and then reach out to the candidates that you're looking to bring in that match the spec that you guys have for a particular role. And I'll just try and be kind of self-immolating or self-deprecating and say, I know that probably sounds really complicated having to think about that explanation, but that's why I wanted to see if you might have or might be open to a conversation about your talent strategy, where we might be able to fit into any of the projects you guys might have going into 2021 since we're in Q4. And if you have some time open this week.
Steven, can I ask you to just say like the explanation of what you guys do? Can you just say that again?
Yeah, so Findem helps companies leverage their people data and data of people that they're looking to recruit to make more strategic workforce and hiring decisions.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, I can show you the product if you'd like.
No, I mean, part of what, and like, part of what I was thinking is, so it's like clearer than most very jargony explanations of what companies do, but I'm wondering if there's a way for us to even like just warm up and make even more intelligible so that you don't then have to apologize for how complex the thing you did.
Well,
how many times do people go, what? Like what? Explain that? Or how often do they go, perfect, that's what I was looking for. I need 2 of those.
So that's why it's kind of funny. So that's why I was at the, like when I explained at the beginning, it's like we've kind of coined the phrase people intelligence, is because it is a new thing. So whenever you hear people intelligence, like that makes me think of like marketing when it comes to like people data, when it's like retargeting ads and stuff like that. Like companies are mining data to be able to be more effective with like marketing outreach and stuff like that. But we're actually using that type of approach when it comes to mining data on people that you would want to be hiring. Does that make sense? So like we bring all of the data that somebody might have in one place or all over the internet from a work standpoint. So like LinkedIn Sales Navigator is one source of data. Now, to break it down to show you how complicated the recruiting process is, a lot of companies use LinkedIn Recruiter. Hopefully I don't start beef with LinkedIn Recruiter just being on this show. LinkedIn Recruiter. So from a sales perspective, we use Sales Navigator. All of the data on prospects, or in this case, recruits, that's on Sales Navigator is from like a resume perspective. So it's like one sheet of data. Whereas if you're a recruiter, you're going to look at LinkedIn Recruiter and then you're going to see this person has this, and this experience. And then if you're looking for something that's really complicated, like some form of coding that a software engineer might have, in terms of experience. Then you're going to have to go look at their GitHub profile. You're going to have to find if they've like maybe won hackathons or yada, yada, yada. So you're going to have like 87 tabs open on your browser. Like, oh crap, does this person have all this stuff? Did they work at a hyper-growth startup? Yada, yada, yada. Findem pulls that in one spot. So it's like,
so if I'm, I don't know, pick on Gavin. If I'm Gavin and I'm working for a manufacturing company in Ohio, and we're like, hey, we need like a really, really niche type of an engineering person, I can go on LinkedIn, I could go through a third-party company, but a bunch of those attributes
exactly,
are really kind of hard to, all compile into one space. You're saying, if I'm Gavin, I can say, hey, I need this engineer that's got all these, buzzwords attached to what we're looking for, and you guys will kind of just suck all the information from the interweb, and they'll be like candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3.
Yep. So essentially,
Doesn't sound real. I don't believe it.
It's exact. I mean, I can show it to you.
Like a
It's
centralized
exactly
repository for
so
HR
cool.
hiring data.
quite literally, yes. So it's exactly what Francois said. So like the term attribute, that's what we associate in a query fashion. It's an attribute is a data point on somebody. So like you want somebody that has Spark coding experience, you put that in as an attribute, and it finds anybody and everybody that has that experience and pulls them into your candidate pool.
So the way you're describing it now is far more effective
Okay.
than like
Cool.
than when you were first kind of going into like more of the high level of what we do.
Right.
If you can figure out a way to take what you just did right there, okay, because if you get an executive on the phone, they're probably going to let you pitch, but it might just be for entertaining purposes, like, let's see what this guy's got. So if you're able to throw out there something like really concrete and like that hits them between the eyes, it's like, here's a scenario. This is what we do for you in this scenario. It will instantly lend value. It's going to tell them exactly what you guys do. And it's also a cool story. And you could even tailor it in a way, like hyper personalize it based on what their particular company. So if you're calling like all tech companies or something today, like, hyper personalize the scenario that you're using. If you're calling, health institutes and things of that nature, or insurance or whatever, just for that day, like, just like the combo prospecting, just hyper personalize for that industry or whatever, tech. I think that would be a lot more effective, just in my opinion, because I felt like you didn't need half the words that you said initially. You could have described it with a scenario and it would have been like, oh, cool. And then followed by something like, so, I guess you could say we're a centralized repository for all HR data that you could possibly want or need when you're looking at ideal candidates. Like we solve the problem, like the time, the efficiency, like the time it takes to dig through all that, blah, blah, blah. And just keep it really, really like bullet point, simple as hell for these guys. And then you can say like, I'd love to get into kind of the higher level aspects of like how we're going about doing this and how that could fit in with objectives that you have moving forward, in 2021. And that next call is really where you can get a little bit more verbose and wordy with like the deep meat and potatoes. I don't know. Yeah. That's just my thoughts. I think Jordana, you were probably thinking along the same lines.
I totally agree. Yeah. And that way you don't have to apologize, because every word in a cold call is precious. And if you eat up, 15 of your 32 seconds with words that you then have to apologize for, then I think, something needs.
So what does everybody think of like using a little bit more? And I don't want you to like make up numbers, Stephen, but like, because it might be different for healthcare or it might be different for software development. But let's say I'm reaching out to Jordana, she's chief people officer, and I'm like, hey, we know on average when you're looking for a software developer, there are, 15 different kind of tools you can go or silos of data you can go get your information from. And we know on average it'll take like, an hour to pull that from each system. So there's like 15 hours. We source like all of the information, I know that sounds crazy, into kind of one spot. So we can like decrease your time by like, I don't know what that number would be, 50%. Like I find sometimes like those really specific metrics, it's like, oh, okay, we're spending this much time today. You can help us get down to here. That like resonates, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tied to like a direct business outcome.
Yeah, it's kind of like Cheetah IQ, right? When he came on, his main selling point was right now you're spending all this time researching all of your prospects. all over the internet. You got all these, like you said, you got all these tabs open. You're digging into all these different places to try to find little chunks of gold that you can use when you're communicating with that person, or to kind of guide you through that prospecting process. And now, you know, Cheetah IQ is like now the centralized repository for all of that cool prospecting, you know. So I think that this is the same thing, but for, you know, kind of like HR and recruiting. So maybe I would, I mean, if I were you, I would talk to the guys over there as well and just figure out what they're like, what they're using, what language they're using as well.
I'm going to use Patrick as an example so I can kind of like paint the picture for you.
Sure.
So this is Findem. So say we want to find a sales enablement dude that's just as good as Patrick, but we all know that's not
Impossible.
possible.
Impossible.
Exactly. No, that's not possible. But if we want to try, I guess I should say. So you can do it two ways. You can do it from a raw search, just looking for roles, or you can do it using a LinkedIn profile. I'm going to use Patrick's LinkedIn profile. This is going to get really creepy. Let's go United States. And then, oh, I didn't select it. United States, and then click find. It breaks everything that Patrick Downs has ever done into an attribute. And then you can go in and pick and choose the exact ones that you would want to do.
That's badass.
You would want to apply. So Patrick's company size, PandaDoc, is 200 to 500 employees, and we already know that. But yeah, it breaks it down. So then if you want to go into...
So is this saying there's 32,000 people, or there's 32,000 people in the pool?
There's 32,000 people in the pool based off of the attributes that I didn't select. So you can refine your candidate pool based off of the attributes that you select. If you want to change your location, so like if you only want to look for people on the East Coast, you can look for people on the East Coast. And it's role agnostic and location agnostic, so this does work globally as well. But say we want to look at Grant, because he's an account executive at Qualtrics. We can just pull up Grant's profile, and we can just scroll through everything Grant
Shout
has
out to
ever
Grant.
done.
Grant's
Yeah,
getting
shout
some
out to Grant.
visibility today.
Grant
Is he
at
on the market?
Qualtrics. But yeah, we can look at anything that Grant has ever done from a timeline perspective from when he joined the company. So if like you're talking about a candidate, I want a hypergrowth account or an account executive that worked at a hypergrowth startup from Series B, saw a successful exit. This is what helps you do that, like yada, yada, yada. Essentially, what we're giving companies the ability to do is source candidates in the way that you talk about sourcing them.
So I see the tabs up there, like you talked about GitHub.
Yeah,
Stack Overflow.
GitHub. Since he's an account executive, he's not going to have all
Right.
this stuff. But then if you have common connections in your connection pool for people that work there, you can leverage common connections to send potential emails from those people. Like if they're internally, like there's somebody at my organization that knows Grant, we can leverage them to have like an email campaign go out from them, yada, yada, yada. And then the other side of that is the measuring part, which is my favorite part. So if we want to do PandaDoc for the sake of, shout out to PandaDoc. For the sake of measuring, you can measure your entire workforce on a bunch of different attributes. So this is specific to diversity and inclusion. Tops, your educations, does PandaDoc have a bunch of people that came from top 100 universities? Well, 30% of them did. Degrees, bachelor's, master's, doctorates, we can measure all of that. Are they finance degrees, STEM degrees, blah, 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 experience levels, retention, and then a bunch of intangible stuff. That's the key, is the intangible attributes. So like things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find without a serious amount of research. We pull all that data in. So just to your point, Francois, about the metrics. So there's two that I hit on depending on the conversation. Statistically speaking, only 8%, 8 to 10% of 700 million LinkedIn profiles are filled up with enough information to find in a keyword search, which is one of the drawbacks of using keyword-based searching tools because you're just kind of hoping for the best. And the other one is the average recruiter spends about 5 hours of their day just sourcing candidates, whereas Findem takes about 10 minutes. So
wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So the one question I have is when you're like on that last page where you had all the tabs, do you actually mention those things? Like, let's say you're talking to a chief people officer and you say, hey, Gavin, I know you're looking for this type of an engineer, and we know that you typically need to go to LinkedIn and Stack Overflow and get like call out all of those things to source them. And you can just say, look, in one click, we pull all that data into one onto one screen. Like, do you think, well, I guess the question is to the group, do you think calling out all those things is important versus just saying a lot?
Well, I think calling out all those things really gives it color. And in some ways, I feel like that's even more effective at this stage of the conversation than metrics. I feel like when you get a cold call and then there's just like a wall of numbers that come at you, it's easy to just kind of, but if you're able to really get into their world, they know they have to look at LinkedIn. They know they have to look at GitHub. It shows you understand them. They can connect to it. And I think it really paints a pretty clear picture of what it does and how kind of magic it is.
So Stephen,
Yeah.
after you asked for like 32 seconds, do you think it would be, and again, for the group too, do you think it'd be helpful to maybe go, typically when you're looking for an engineer, Gavin, do you end up having to look at, is it a fair assumption that you have to look at, and you call out the 5 tools GitHub did that, and you let Gavin answer? Because it sounds like you kind of gave like a really nice big chunk of facts,
Right.
but it didn't sound like there was a lot of opportunity in there to like, what do you call it, Patrick, when you bring them down that the pain thread?
And funnel.
Pain funnel.
The
Where you
thread.
like keep asking the questions that
The
you know.
thread of pain.
Exactly. Keep asking them. So then by the end, they're like, they've sold themselves.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Go ahead, Gavin.
And
First thing is, you gotta, like, that was not 32 seconds, right? Like, I would have hung up on you and been like, you lied to me. So you have to really establish your credibility better.
Okay.
When you say, hey, look, let me take a minute and a half, not even sure if this is like really the right conversation to be having with you. Let me share with you why I called. And, let me take 2 minutes, finish your 2 minutes and say, look, I took my 2 minutes. Should we continue having the conversation? And in that, in my estimation, what 3 things are you guys really solving? Because the first thing that would scare me if I was a chief people officer or chief HR officer is your company's going to come and replace my HR staff. Because you guys are like hypersonic, awesomely speeding up finding the candidate process. If you're saying that people do that for 5 hours a day and you can do it in, what'd you say, 15 minutes, 5 minutes? Like, you're endangering other people's jobs, which is awesome. Like, they probably don't earn their bread anyway, but
Yeah, say that.
you got to figure that out, because, like if I'm the CEO, I'm going to be like, sweet, I got payroll I can get rid of now, I can have one person doing 3 people's jobs because it sounds like that's what you can do.
Or you can take and shift those people from spending 5 hours of searching to 5 hours of actively interviewing, hiring, all of that. And then they can take the rest of their time and use it towards creating training materials or whatever internal projects that they have going on where you never have the manpower to put on them. They've always got internal mandates and stuff that they can't keep up with. So that's where you shift them. So you don't like lose those people necessarily. That's just a thought there,
That's actually the biggest, that's actually one of the bigger objections that I get is, well, obviously that would open up the workforce or reduce the amount of people I would need. And well, yeah, true. But and I spin it exactly the way Amy does, is if they're not focusing 5 hours of their day on research and just trying to find people to bring into the organization, then they're actually reducing your time to hire because they spend more time doing that versus the admin work on the back end. Now, I don't have any hard hitting metrics to do that, but that's just one of the points that to like prove how quickly we can reduce their time to hire, because it's not necessarily something that we have measured at this point. Like I said, we just came out of stealth like a week and a half ago, so we're still working on getting customer case studies and stuff like that. But that is actually that's the way that I frame it, is like we can reroute your recruiting staff's attention from admin work to actually closing or interviewing and closing candidates, which is one of the bigger things, because if they're spending most of their time doing admin work, obviously those job recs just sit and sit and sit and sit. So
Yeah.
So
It's
Gavin,
actually,
go ahead,
oh,
Jordan.
sorry, Francois.
No, go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, like, if you get an objection like that, I think that's actually a really interesting opportunity to ask a question. Like, that's so true. Like, what projects, like, if you could reroute, I don't know what the terminology is, your recruiting staff, like, what would be some more meaningful projects that you could imagine assigning them to, right? And like getting them to start to imagine those circumstances.
right.
Well, and all I was going to ask
When
Gavin,
I worked
uh,
when I worked for an AI company, we were trying to come in and reduce time and revenue cycle operations, right, in hospitals. And they have a ton of business staff who are in there. That's their role, right? Like going through billing and stuff like that. So we would hit them up and say, well, I'm sure there's a lot more, like in this case, customer centric things that they could do. So again, just like Jordana said, like there are more people things to be that they could be doing, right? Versus sifting through thousands of profiles. And if you know that's an objection that you're going to hit, if you can get the next step with them and they say, yeah, let's keep talking, you can be like, and I'm sure, you're probably going to say, well, I have all these people already doing that, because I typically hear that. And here's where people have decided to take and use that, their humans in other places. So just head off that objection immediately. Don't even let them bring it up.
All I was going to add there was, to your earlier point, Gavin, what I'm hearing is like, if you're talking to a CEO, you may want to have a script that's more like hyper focused on cost cutting. When it's a chief people officer, although everybody probably wants a more like lean and efficient staff, when you say, hey, you have 10 people, you could go down to 2, like you said, it's probably just going to scare them. They're like, well, I don't need a job if I don't have to manage a team. So like maybe a more specific script by role, because the CFO, there's certain things that he's, he or she are thinking about, probably the bottom line. But chief people officer, like the repurposing is probably the road they're going to go down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And
But I think even, oh, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that, one of the ways that you can sell more effectively too is to show your empathy as well. We never want to come in and take software and use software to replace bodies, especially not now, I mean, so figuring out a way to kind of tactfully work around that objection. I mean, you're not overcoming it, because technically, could they displace headcount? Yes, they could. If that's maybe they have to do that to offset the cost of purchasing your software. So from a business standpoint, it's absolutely a possibility. And as a professional, we have to make sure that we're not selling them a lie, so, but also be empathetic about it. So I think that you're so articulate and like kind of chill anyways, that you do that really well. So I don't think that's anything that you have to learn. I'm curious to see, like, are you guys finding that you're able to really effectively articulate quickly and concisely what you guys do? Because like, I'd love to hear you kind of running through some different like role plays, kind of like what you were doing earlier, or scenarios, I guess I could say, on, if you're looking for this type of person, this is how you would do it with using our software, because I think that's going to be your money right there. With like let's just look at cybersecurity, what I'm doing, it's so broad, right? Like I'm calling up someone and I have no clue if they are an IT director that knows anything about cybersecurity, or they outsource it, or where do they stand, what's their level of understanding of data, for instance. I mean, you have some of these chief people officers that are not technically savvy at all, and they're just so far removed from the actual grunt work that when you use the technical jargon and language, and you kind of, you're talking about the centralized repository for all this information and all of this, and you kind of get really technical with it, they're just they don't care. They're looking at dollars and cents, and they're looking at their department budget and like meeting a certain criteria. And as long as they're hitting those goals, great. And if they're not, they want to figure out why they're not. That's what you're appealing to with these executives. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you feel like you get, do people give you the time Like once you get into like your kind of your pitch, do you feel like they stop you at any point, or do they let you get through it?
It's weird. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think you might be right that they're just entertaining me, but I don't know. It works for me. And I'm not going to say this is the way I go about my phone pitches works for anybody else. I think it's just one of those things that's like, oh, this kid sounds goofy, but then I explain the actual challenge and how we're solving those things. And they're like, oh, shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. And this is something that I'm having a problem with. At this point, this isn't to say my messaging doesn't need improving because it absolutely does. But to your point, Amy, I actually do, depending on the company, look at job postings for the companies. A lot of them have more niche job postings, or some have more niche job postings than others, and kind of use that in my script as well, depending on what they're looking for in terms of a skill set. But usually it's just a pretty blanket, broad explanation, just kind of addressing the overarching challenge of how much time or how complicated the process of finding candidates using all the disparate tools at this point is. But usually if I'm calling a chief people officer, they're more focused on the overall strategy versus having the team under them that is bringing the candidates in. Obviously they still manage that team, but they have to plan the diversity strategy. Do they have any particular hiring goals that are centered around degrees or other intangible attributes? And that's kind of where the other part of the platform comes into play for them, is because they can measure
Yeah.
all of those things. And a lot of tools out there have the ability to measure internally, but at this point, none of them measure externally.
Oh, that's a really good point right there.
Yeah.
Because when you showed us like PandaDoc, we were able to instantly kind of dig into the metrics of that organization. That was really interesting. And because it was because you're trying to sell it to someone whose sole purpose is to make sure that there's diversity and inclusion, and that they're not too that they're just well balanced as an organization, and including in talent, like who they're hiring from. Are they hiring college educated people, or are they hiring people like me that have kind of worked their way up? I mean, they need a healthy balance, and it's like an ecosystem or whatever. So I think saying like what you just said right there is you're the only organization that does it externally. Like that's a huge point to nail with like a chief people officer, and maybe something to bring up in your pitch, so like we're helping companies with this, and this, and we're the only organization doing this. And they may not fully understand what that means, but they're going to go, oh, like kind of like Francois said, like something's got to grab their attention. And you find out what that is, but depending on who you're talking to, and that's it. You just need a little bit more of their attention, and then you can roll it forward into another call where you can really like blow their socks off.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, do you have a sense of like the different problems that the software solves for like the chief people officer versus like a kind of HR manager who's also kind of having to do all the research? Like, do you already have in your arsenal a way to kind of speak about the product differently based on the unique challenges of each kind of persona within the org?
Yeah. So the funny thing is I haven't really gone any lower than the VP of talent of any kind. So like I haven't really spoken with the HR managers very, very much really.
Okay.
But usually the messaging that I've seen resonate across both people that I'm targeting in terms of the CPO and the VPs are more attracted to the streamlining of process and efficiency of the team that works below them from a hiring standpoint. And the CPO resonates more with the actual benchmarking side. So it's like the metric side, because those metrics are directly tied to planning for a business outcome. So it's like if they have the data to more effectively plan, and then the VP has the ability to streamline the process to meet those goals, it's a win-win situation.
So one of the challenges for like the data person is how hard it is. What would you say is what? is that it's difficult to,
the ability to get the data in general. So
in order to effectively plan and
yeah,
forecast?
in order to effectively plan for diversity and stuff like that, because a lot of the stuff that we use is publicly available data. So like we use US Census data and financials for companies and stuff like that. And it's one of those things
What
that
about a line like it, like we help companies with improving the efficiency and the time it takes to harvest the data they need for, you know, for recruiting purposes. I mean, just something like that, like finding like a really good tagline, something that's like harvesting data. What does that mean? You know, but like using it for a specific purpose, like harvesting data for this purpose. I think, you know, that I think that would resonate really well with, I don't know, I like harvesting.
for recruiting, for workforce planning, or no, we help companies more effectively
Harvesting bodies.
use data to, we help companies more effectively use data to plan workforce projects
Just
and
say it,
execute.
Stephen.
I'm trying to think of the words, like I'm trying to, because I fucking hate buzzwords and I'm trying to not
Use
use
harvesting in
buzzwords.
a sentence.
Harvesting. What is this? Is it because
You
it's
can't
fall?
even say it with a
Is
straight
it
face.
is it because it's fall and there's pumpkins around? Like what's going on?
I don't know. Harvesting for me is creeping me out.
Yeah, it's like,
I
oh, you're
almost-
you're harvesting data. Like,
Wait a second, just really quickly, like I feel, and tell me what you guys think, but like I feel like the most important part of this call is like once you get your 27 seconds, what is the challenge that you outline that is going to catch their attention so they're like, this guy knows my world? And that's why I'm asking these questions, like what are the specific challenges and how do we describe them as accessibly as possible, as though they would be in the language of
see, that's why I kind
VP
of
people.
like try and highlight, like I try and say specific tools on the phone, because I don't have any tools at this point that tells me technology's used, like a lead IQ or something like that, which I would be using 100% of the time if I did have those tools. So I try and just highlight the main ones, like LinkedIn Recruiter. You guys probably use Greenhouse or iSIMS as an ATS or something like that. And none of those tools talk to each other. I'm sure you know this. And then explain how we're solving those things.
But if you go from like Jordana was saying, your first like asking for permission for the call,
Right.
and then I mean personally I'm thinking like keeping it as, I don't want to say dumbed down, I don't like that term,
Yeah.
but kind of as simple, like, you know, and almost asking that question. Like I always like how Patrick gets us into these like what do you call them, the reverse, where you're kind of like, you keep at like, you know, what if I told you you know, most HR departments or recruiting departments use like 5 to 8 tools and spend about 5 hours to you know, compile their lists, and we can take that down to, you know, less than an hour and 1 tool. Would you still be open to hearing more? And like, who's gonna say no to that?
That makes perfect sense. I've actually never thought about it that way. I don't know. It's just like, go ahead.
Let me give you like a quick 30-second commercial that I created for you, right? So I'm just throwing this out here, but hey, you know, Stephen, this is Gavin. Name ring a bell? No. Fantastic. Look, I don't even know if it makes sense for us to chat right now. Let me go ahead and take a few seconds, tell you why I called. You know, Stephen, typically when I'm working with other CPOs like yourself, you know, they've grown a great business, but they're frustrated with streamlining processes when they're doing hiring. Other times, you know, they're getting their processes down, but they're concerned that they're not able to benchmark the candidates properly. And probably the most common thing I'm hearing is like, they're tired of portal death, man. They've got to jump from this site to this site to this site. Not sure if any of that resonates with you, but if it is, you know, and I had a magic wand to fix any of those, what would be the first thing that comes to mind? And then shut up.
It's really good.
I like that phrase, portal death. I'm going to use that. Real talk.
So I stole that from when I sold AI stuff, like, because these business people had to go and revenue cycle programs, and it was like sign in, password, log into this thing and this thing, and I'm like, dude, we can
So
reduce your
true.
portal death.
Anything that
That's
centralizes
just
anything.
my little bit.
Centralized management or centralized data is so huge right now. and so easy to sell if you know how to sell it, because it's mandated from the top down that centralized management in all facets of that business is mandatory, because there's so many data streams coming in from everywhere in every single department in any organization. They have to have a common way to centralize that information. So any department head that's going after budget right now, that's saying centralized management, centralize this is what our department needs to streamline efficiencies in this department. I guarantee you, most of these organizations have centralized management of some point or part on their radar, and they have budget dollars assigned for that component of their business. Patrick can use that for PandaDoc. Same thing, right? Centralize. I mean, for Fortinet, we've got FortiManager, FortiAnalyzer, things like that are all about centralizing management. And so I think that, like, to Gavin's point, it makes total sense to use some of those pain points that are driving them towards, because you want that CPO thinking, okay, this sounds cool, but ultimately, like, I got to get, someone has to sign off on this. He may still have to go after budget, may still have to get someone's blessing, and that's all business. That's all business. So I like that, Gavin. I think that was great.
I like Gavin's. I want to throw another one out there. Like, I love the portal death, but I thought the visual analogy that you gave of many tabs open, we could all relate to. And so,
Yeah.
like, let's say the chief people officer is Jordana, and we know Gavin's one of the HR, I don't know, managers or something. And if you were talking to Jordana, it's like, look, I'm certain, Gavin has like 50 tabs open every day. What if, and spends 5 hours? What if I told you he could have one tab open and spend like half an hour a day? Like, weave part of that into this story because it's like super visual. Like, everybody can relate to that. Not that people can't relate to a portal death, but
I also think too, what's good about Gavin's example is that, like, it's not you, the company, and the seller proclaiming the industry broken. It's like you're establishing yourself as a credible person who's speaking to a lot of players in the space, and these are some of the things you're hearing, and it gives them permission to say, oh yeah, I have that problem too, right?
I'm thinking maybe I should change my so post 32-second question. Like, if you have 32 seconds, let me tell you why I was calling. The reason I was calling is because we've been speaking to other insert title here, and what we found is yada yada yada. Okay, cool. So just changing that slight bit of verbiage might actually help a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to a lot of
insert title here too.
Insert title here.
This is where it would this is where I would usually use your name.
I'm curious.
Hey, name.
Yeah. Hey, babe.
I'm curious, out of the like, when you ask them for that, what's your percent of hang up, do you think?
Honestly, again, I'm gonna tie this back to Amy saying that these people are just entertaining me for like that purpose, but I have a pretty high clip rate when it comes to letting them at least talk to me. I usually talk to probably 80% of the people that let me get past that roadblock.
I think that's so big in sales though, because I think the one thing you can't, there's intangibles to what we do. You have a very chill kind of persona, and when you talk, like, people kind of want to listen a little bit, like, what's this guy going to talk about? And so initially, if all they're doing is for curiosity's sake and entertainment sake, which a lot of them will do, but then you can hook them in any way. I mean, that's all sales is. So that cold call, that outreach, that prospecting, it's just about getting attention. Once you have their attention, that's yours, right? Do with it what you will. And it's yours to make or break. And, if there's a need, great. If there's not.
So is that the call in your sequence that's pre-voicemail, pre-email?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will use that same opener regardless of how many times I've called them and they haven't answered. So like,
what percentage of the people you call have had like a voicemail and an email, do you think? Like, know of you?
Maybe 30%.
Do you ever say the sales weasel?
No, I've thought about it, but I don't.
Steven the sales weasel Chase.
I'm not active enough on LinkedIn for people to know who that is.
Dude, I like blasted you. I've like put you on, I don't know how many podcasts. in
But-
webinars. I like
I-
show your profile every
I
single
kind of want to
time.
do it though, just to see what the reaction is. I won't even use my actual name. I'll just say, hey, this is a sales weasel.
Yeah, right.
And
Do
then
that
see
on
what-
Fridays.
How many return calls are you getting?
In terms of from my voicemails, I actually don't get return calls. The funniest thing is I get text messages because I am calling cell phones.
Oh, and they'll say, call me back
Top
later.
tip, call
Mm.
cell phones. If you're too afraid to call cell phones, you're doing it wrong.
I call
Um,
cell phones all day long.
I love cell phones. I've booked, I think I was gonna check my watch. 100% of, I'm not even wearing a watch. 100% of my meetings from cell phone numbers.
I call their desk phone and then leave them a voicemail and I tell them in the voicemail that I'm calling their mobile, and then I call their mobile like immediately after, and then sometimes I'll call it from my mobile phone. They just hit them like boom, 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 and then they answer, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I just called you like 30,000 times. I'm so sorry for that. Technical difficulties or whatever.
But Gavin,
Yeah.
was that a look of surprise? Like, do you think a lot of people don't leverage that, or you
I
think?
don't, Gavin's mad at me for calling cell phones.
Oh, I'm not mad at you. Look, you got to earn your cheddar, but to me, that does not say equal business stature.
Ooh,
You know, people got to
spicy.
make money, but I guarantee you, if I called some of the CEOs that I talk to on a daily basis on their cell phone, I'd burn my brand forever. They
yeah,
might
that
humor
might be
me,
the case.
but they would never purchase my services.
Really?
But if it works for you, keep at it. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think when you approach it from a way that's really conversational, like I call cell phones all the time, and I'm always like, "Hey, Amy from Fortinet," like hey, I always like pretend like they already know me, like, "Hey, Amy at Fortinet," and they're like, "Wait, who?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I know, I'm calling you out of the blue. I'm actually like blah blah blah," and then I just get right into it, and they I've never ever, and maybe it's just me, but I don't have a lot of people hang up on me. They at least hang on long enough to know why I'm calling. And I get down to brass tacks pretty quickly, because I'm like, I don't want to BS them. But I think if their mobile phone numbers are out there in the ether, it's fair game. This
I
is the way
just
I
think,
look at it.
I think it's solely because of my opener, because I'm telling them up front it is a cold call. And then
Yeah.
I'm giving them the option to just hang up on me. But if they want to keep
So-
talking to me, they want to keep talking to me.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're getting all these people to give you the permission to keep talking, I feel that then that next moment, as I said, and I don't want to be a broken record, is so important. And
Yeah.
I can't help but think, like, I know we only have 3 minutes, but I felt like you were just so close in the thing you just shared about, like, I've been talking to a lot of blah, 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 and they
Yeah.
tell me challenge. I'm kind of hungry for like a rep or two incorporating all of the things that we've talked about like really painting a very clear human, regular, non-jargony picture of what the challenges you're hearing are. I don't know, Francois, like, do we have the time for that?
I can go a little bit over. I don't know, Stephen, do you want to, I mean, I think you've been
I
like
have time.
piecing it together. Do you want to go for what? Do you want to use Jordana as your caller?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's do it.
Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Jordana, this is Steven. Listen, I want to be up front. This is a cold call, so feel free to hang up on me. But if you have like 32 seconds, I'd love to tell you why I was calling.
You've gotten my 32 seconds. Go ahead. It better be good.
Awesome. Well, I'm calling from a company called Findem, and the reason I was giving you a shout is because I saw that you oversee talent acquisition for ABC.
I can't hear him very well.
I was calling because I saw that you oversee talent acquisition for ABC Company, and I've been speaking with a lot of VPs of talent lately that have, and I found that a lot of them are seeing challenges because they're using a bunch of different tools that don't really talk to each other very well, like LinkedIn Recruiter. Maybe they're using a gem for email engagement, Lead IQ, Zoom Info for contact software, etc. And they don't really talk to each other very well, let alone your ATS. So essentially what we've done is we've developed a single solution that will do the research for your recruiters, saving them up to 5 hours a day, and then be able to benchmark all of the workforce metrics that you need to measure your workforce planning goals effectively and then source against them.
Okay, cool. I think it was Francois or someone, or maybe Patrick, like, I think there's a really nice opportunity once you share the challenge, and maybe it's like Gavin did, multiple choice. Like, I'm hearing three key things: this,
Okay.
this, and this, and then asking like, which one, like, which of those are you struggling with, or right, like, just get their buy-in. Because if they
So,
don't have any of those challenges, then there's no reason for you to continue.
okay, so let's back it up again. So
Yeah,
we'll start over.
cool.
Ring ring.
Hello.
Hey, Jordana, this is Steven. Listen, I wanna be upfront. This is a cold call, so feel free to hang up on me. But if you have like 32 seconds, I'd love to tell you why I was calling.
I have 32 seconds. Go ahead.
Awesome. Well, I'm calling from a company called Findem, and I was reaching out to you because I saw that you are the VP of Talent Acquisition for ABC Company. And I've been speaking with a lot of VPs of talent lately, and they're seeing a bunch of different challenges, mainly using a bunch of disjointed tools, not being able to measure their workforce metrics effectively, and their recruiters are actually spending a lot of time just doing a bunch of back-end work instead of engaging and closing candidates. Is that something that you guys are seeing? Maybe a couple of those?
Uh, yeah, yeah, there's definitely a lot of time wasting, that's for sure.
Okay, well, essentially what we've done is we've built a solution that allows recruiters to stay in a single tab instead of 87 of them, to be able to source their candidates using a bunch of publicly available data across all data points. And it brings everything into one window for you, so you can save up to 5 hours a day, and then be able to engage with candidates so your recruiters can spend more time doing the actual engaging and closing and bringing people into the organization. And I know I gave you a bunch of high level information, but I really wanted to see if you might have some time, maybe in the next couple days, so we can learn more about you guys, your specific challenges, and how we might be able to fit into them, and show you how the solution in itself works.
Yeah, I have some time. Okay.
I think that last part sounded almost a little too salesy. Just my take on it. Like it's like a very common transition for sales calls, but I think if you keep it a little bit more casual, like you're just like, so if anything like that's resonating with you, I mean, basically the reason for my call was to see if you have any time on your calendar, in the coming like days to sync up, so that we can kind of show you a little bit more like on a deeper level what we're doing and how we can help organizations like you, and specifically kind of understand a little bit more about what your objectives are moving forward. I don't know, keep it a little bit more like less like scripted, like, or just retool that last part of the script so it sounds a little bit more conversational.
Okay.
Because the I'm more successful on sales calls the less salesy I am. Like, I mean, I can ask about budget and timeline and authority and all of this by just kind of rolling it into more of a conversational tone, because the more you make it sound like a structured cold call, sales call, they're wise to that at this point. I mean, like, I get them, and I get the emails and stuff all the time. So that last part, I would just maybe make it a little bit more conversational, not like, so like, okay, now here's what we're going to do here, sir. I think that'll suit your personality really well, and be a little bit more confident in, the fact that you want to get them on another call because this is a really cool product and service, and you're really excited to share how it will help them. Like, it's definitely stand behind that because it's badass. It's really cool.
I totally agree, Amy. And just in terms of like the structure, like, I think if you're going to present 3 ideas, like 3 challenges, like, you can just, so that everything is clear at the top, it can be like, hey, I've been talking to a lot of VPs of people, and I've really been hearing like 3 key things. The first is this, because it just helps them know what to listen for.
Right.
And then you can say like, so, are you experiencing any of that? And I actually don't mind if the question is close-ended there, like, what's your experience with that? And then from there, if they say, yeah, I can really relate to X, Y, and Z, then it's like, well, so that is exactly what we help companies like you make easier. Are you interested in learning more, or, do you have
Just
some
cut out all the middle stuff.
Yeah,
because a cold call is not about really selling them. It's really about like selling another conversation away. And then, of course, if they're like, actually, I'm so interested, tell me now, then that's your opportunity. But like, just pique their curiosity. If they've said they had a problem, be like, we actually can fix that. Do you want to know more? And then once they say yes, that's like more buy-in and more permission for you to keep rolling.
Right. And I mean, I know that when I was doing, just traditional SDR stuff, and trying to book meetings, I mean, usually I'd roll through that and get to where you are at the end, but I'm still like, they'd still push back, oh, I don't have a lot of time. I mean, you're going to get those objections and stuff like that. And that's when the real selling comes into place, because you're trying to overcome like whatever their reasoning is that they can't join a call at that point. And I think that's probably where I would focus time too, because it's like the Achilles heel of a sales rep. Like the minute they get through everything and it's like, oh, cool, let me talk. And you get down to brass tacks and you're trying to book a meeting, then you're going to get objections. So the more confident you are like throughout, the more like kind of fun and relaxed you are, the less objections you'll get at the end when you're talking about booking a meeting. And you might want to maybe even say something at the end, like, let's, are you cool with syncing up our calendars and just looking to see what time we have that, we can find 15 minutes to chat in the coming weeks. And I don't say days, I usually say weeks, because it's less like, oh, I got to find some time like in the next 2 days. Like, I mean, I'm a week out on my calendar and I'm not even like the sales executive, like I'm not, no one's trying to sell me anything. So little things like that, like I think will make an impact. So being like, yeah, you see, let's sync up our calendars, just see what we have open, like in the next, in the coming weeks. And if this is something that you'd like to hear more about it, let's get a call on the calendar.
I
or
heard
let's
that,
get a call.
I was listening to an interview with Josh Braun yesterday, and he was using this concept where he was saying like, people don't like the pressure of now, to kind of what you're saying, Amy. So it was interesting in this example, what he was saying is like, at the end, he said like, this isn't something, you may be interested in now, but maybe it's something we could talk about for the future. So you're kind of like saying, hey, I'm not trying to like, pin you to like making a decision, but you still want to try and get some commitment to have a conversation. But you're saying, hey, like, this is maybe something you want to do now, but be something maybe you'd be interested in doing in the future. And then if they kind of agree to that, then you can be like, okay, cool. Like, let's talk about it as this theoretical thing, not like, okay, cool, you're interested in meeting, let's sell it to you. Like, I need to get a deal in by this quarter. And I think people don't like that pressure.
Yeah.
I use the term, I'll give you what you need to do your due diligence. I mean, and I leave it at that. Like, and I say things like, I know you're going to be probably shopping other options. You're probably looking at other vendors. So like my objective is just to give you the resources you need to do your due diligence when you're looking at solutions, like what we do, or in this, in this space, or however you want to word that. But I straight up tell like my customers, like, I ask them like, hey, are you guys looking at any other solutions that are doing what we're doing? Like, does this ring a bell? Like, is there anything else that you're out there kind of looking at right now that is similar to what we're doing? You'd be amazed at how quickly they will respond and tell you exactly what they're looking at. Like, exactly what they're looking at. And they'll also tell you who their competitors are, like once you get further down the process, if you just like keep it like really chill. Like, so the same thing, I think the same thing will go with, like booking that meeting. Like the more kind of low key and chill you keep it, the less invasive, like saying things like in the coming weeks and as opposed to days, even if they have like time on Friday and that's 2 days from now, great. So I'll say weeks, and then my first option that I offer up is within 48 hours. Like, I'm like, well, I actually have some time this Friday. And they'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, I have some time this Friday. And then because you didn't come out right out the gate with saying like next couple of days, let's, nail it down. They'll usually pick a closer time.
I thought you were doing the hard to get, Amy, and saying like, well, I'm pretty booked up for a few weeks. Yeah. I happen to have a slot that just opened up this Friday.
Right. I'll be like, listen, you'd be doing me a favor, okay?
Well, I know we're a few minutes over, so we should probably wrap it up. Thanks for presenting, being on the spot, Stephen, having the halo and everything. Jordana, thanks for coming on. It was finally good.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so good to meet you.
It was
finally.
Awesome. And thank you for being such a fan too, Jordana. I know you've been there from like the jump, and so is Stephen.
I was one of the only people, I swear, who was like watching replays of the earliest.
Yeah,
That
it's so
that one
cool.
view was me, guys.
You're awesome. And Steven, I'm like super stoked to see like how you guys do, because like the minute you went into that demo, I'm like, I want to see like a deeper demo of it. Like that was cool.
It's a creepy product, but it's super
Yeah,
cool.
it is. It's super creepy. Well, it's just like I talk to customers all the time about like Fortinet, and I'm like, hey guys, what kind of reports do you run? Like, what are you seeing on those reports? Like, what are people downloading
Oh,
from their remote work environments?
oh
Anyways,
my
cut the
lord.
recording.
I gotta jump. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Later,
guys.
guys.